Hey everybody, Matthew Temple here. So good to see you. Today's got this first day of fall feeling here in Northern California. A really kind of cozy feel today as I'm wearing my hoodie and getting some stuff done. And I just wanted to take this minute. Yeah, I'm definitely no magician. I'll tell you, I am no Dumbledore by any means. I would never have any good seat at the hall in Hogwarts. But there are a few things that I wanted to share with you that I find kind of magical, little insights that have just been really powerful for me, but also with many of the people I've been working with. And there are three things that have come up lately, and I just wanted to take this moment to share those. The first really being is how do you turn your past failures into creative successes? It's a little secret that so many people overlook when it comes to their creative work, or when you kind of hit some kind of wall, or you find that you haven't done as much as you wish you had, or whatever. So, a little way of actually really turning that around and turning that into a huge benefit for you. The other thing is around paradox and ambiguity and how important that is in the creative process. What does that mean? Well, we'll get into that in a second. And then lastly, I want to just touch base on what your worst boss ever, or the job you hated the most, can teach you about having a wonderful and successful creative practice. Okay, so to start, failures into your successes. One of the things when marketers, or really any engineers, scientists, when they embark on the work that they're doing, one of the things is that they'll set an hypothesis. This is the idea that I believe is going to work, and they put it out there. Now, when we're creative people, or generally in our lives, kind of like our regular lives, we don't love failures. We don't love to sit down and write for a while and then come back and say, oh man, this totally sucks. We just don't like that. It just doesn't feel good. And so then you kind of get this thing, well, maybe I don't want to do this anymore, or maybe that wasn't such a good idea, or whatever the other kind of stuff you can put on yourself. But here's the thing. So the reason why I talk about scientists or marketers, but what happens is you have a hypothesis and you put it out there, and then you've got to say, did that work or not? And in some fields, failure is a key part of getting to the success, because what do marketers and scientists have in common and do? They'll basically look and say, hey, we tried that, it didn't work. Now I know what doesn't work. Now I get to ask a new question. I need to get to try something new. And when that doesn't work, I'm kind of eliminating the things that don't work. And the more I eliminate things that don't work, the closer I get to the things that do work. And so when I'm, doing my creative work, what I found is that a lot of people will be like, I've tried to do this for a while and then it just doesn't work. And so it's this disheartened feeling instead of, wait a second. Every misstep, every little bit of not working or bad in quotes work that you did is data. It's data to be mined. It's information that you can pull out and say, well, what am I going to do? What do I do with this? So, like, for example, like I had a woman who I worked with who for 10 years wanted to write this book, but she was so worried about repercussions. It had some personal family stuff in it. She was a little bit nervous about it. So when we started working together, one of the things that came up after just a pretty short period of time is, actually, I don't want to do that project. I don't want to do that. And yeah, she worked for a few months, and you can say, oh, well, she worked for a few months and she wasted that time. But I would say, no, she gathered really important data. She knows that now that's not what I want to do. And so for 10 years, she was living with this feeling of kind of like a failure, or it didn't really work out very well. And then at the end of the day, I was like, oh, actually, I get to set that aside. I get to free myself up to see what is the next thing that I want to do. I worked with the guy who wanted to work on his project 5 days a week. And every time he's like, I can write a ton. I can write 5 days a week. I can write, for 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. And I'm thinking, you got a wife, you got a job, you got all this other stuff. That's impossible. But he didn't understand that. And then what was happening is that he was failing, and over again, he kept failing at that and thinking, oh, maybe I'm no good, or maybe I'm not cut out for this. When the reality is the data was not saying you're not a good writer or you shouldn't be writing. The data was saying you have set yourself up to do something that's impossible. And so what we started working on is, how about twice a week? And now twice a week is like, I can find 2 times a week. That's pretty easy. In this person's life, twice a week was easy. And so there was data in the failure to say, I tried to do 5 days a week, that didn't work, or I tried to do this and that. So I see a lot of those things. And we tend to, as creatives, get really down on ourselves when we have failures instead of saying, what do we learn from that? What is the data that we now have that we can mine for great information? Okay, so every time you've thought, I want to do this and it hasn't been as good as you wanted it to be, or you said you were going to do something you didn't follow through, how about mining that for saying, okay, now I know what doesn't work. Now I can try something else. And if that doesn't work, fine. Go again and go again and go again, right? A marketer will put out 100 messages until they find one that really works and sticks and resonates with their audiences. You get to do the same thing. Do it for yourself. Number 2, paradox and ambiguity are vital to the creative process. And here's what that means. I'm working with someone the other day who's really good with goals and deadlines, who has done a lot of creative projects on deadlines. But now that she's working on her own project, the deadline is something she's putting for herself, and it's kind of crimping her style. So if you followed my work, you know that I think that it's really important to create a goal. But here's where the paradox comes in to play, is that you set a goal, and it is vital to get to that goal because you've set a goal, and you've got to honor yourself and your word and your time and your process and attain that goal. And then, paradoxically, the opposite also is true. You don't need to hit that goal. The goal is really there just simply as a marker, not as a marker, but as a guide, as a beacon of light, something that gives you direction. Because if you don't have anywhere to go, you're not going to get up and start. So when you get really clear and you set that goal and you put it out in front of you and you say, okay, I'm going to go there, that's getting you on the path. And then because this is a creative journey, as a hero's journey, you're going to uncover and discover what you really need to be doing. Something is going to come alive in you. At the same time, you've set yourself a goal, quit, giving up on your dreams and things that matter to you and get to that goal. They both exist at the same time. Being able to live with the ambiguity of that and the uncertainty in that and the discovery of what am I going to find, the fact that the goal is there for you to get to and also not there for you to get to at all, is the beauty of the creative process. It's the paradox that leads towards creative success. When you can get comfortable with that, it's beautiful. Okay, and number 3, what your worst boss or your worst job can teach you about creative success. So here's the thing. I want you to think back to a boss or a job that you had or have that you really don't like. I've had a couple of bosses, and I'm telling you, we're somewhere on the spectrum between just terrible people and just didn't know how to manage other people. And here's the thing. When they said, show up at, I just got distracted. There was a deer right outside my office door eating blackberries. That's cute. Anyway, I showed up for that job when they said, you got to be here at this time. Guess what? I showed up at that time. Guess what? You've had crappy bosses, crappy jobs. And when they said, be there at 9, you were there at 9. But here's the thing. You don't love your job in the same way that you love your creative passions, your ideas, yourself, your own self-worth. But yet you prioritize showing up for your boss and showing up for your job, but you haven't been doing that for yourself. And so here's the thing. I want you to look at that and realize I've shown up for things I don't care about, that I don't love. So now, when I say I'm going to show up for myself, when I say I will, when I'm giving myself this opportunity now that I'm going to write or I'm going to film or I'm going to record or I'm going to paint or I'm going to sculpt or whatever I'm going to do. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to show up. It's difficult. You will be challenged. But yet, is it more difficult than your worst boss, than your worst job? Probably not. So go ahead, take whatever that was that got you out of bed to show up for a terrible boss, for a terrible job. Take that, utilize that. That's what you can use for when you're thinking on Thursday night, I'm going to write for 2 hours, or I'm going to go film this weekend, or I'm going to go out in the studio, or I'm going to set up my easel, whatever I'm going to do. Go ahead, do that. And you know what? If it's hard, just think of that terrible boss you showed up for, and now you think, you know what? I'm not so bad. the difficulty that I'm facing, the feeling of inadequacy, or whatever those things that come up when you actually sit down to do your work, go ahead and say, you know what? Thank you. You're kind of like a crappy boss. I'm going to show up anyways. I'm going to push through that. I'm going to get what I need here. So with that, have a beautiful, creative week. As always, if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe, like, share, and stay in touch. Get in touch anyways. Questions, comments, concerns. I would love to be in touch and help you get where you need to be on your creative journey. Have a good one.